Today on the podcast, Jo Dietrich, founder of the Swiss award-winning agency ZEAM. We talk about Generation Z, how to target them, how to actually get the most of the customer lifetime value, and so much more. It was definitely one of my favorite podcasts this year. Check it out now.
New Trend Society, the BDX marketing podcast with Benjamin Dietrich.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of New Trend Society. Today I have one of the brightest founders from Switzerland in my podcast. I met him a couple times at different conferences in Munich, at Bits and Pretzels, at Business Creator Summit of my friend Sarah Emmerich, in June in Frankfurt, and we had a really deep talk about marketing, about how to build an agency, how to win big clients, and a lot of more stuff. And that was very, very impressive to me. So after that conference in Frankfurt, I came home and thought to myself, maybe there are other people out there in the world who would love to listen to our conversation. And so as he is very, very busy, he's a young father, he runs a big agency and is super successful, and it's already is right now in the move between two apartments. We could get a hold of him, and finally he is here. Jo Dietrich, founder and CEO of ZEAM.
Hi, Benny. Thanks a lot for the invitation, and also that I have the chance to revisit our last conversation. That was super interesting also for me.
Jo, can you give us a little bit of insight about yourself, a little bit of background? You founded the company together with Jael Meyer, your beautiful wife, and you guys are both super young and very successful, and basically I wouldn't say the rising stars. You're like the young stars in Switzerland and especially Zurich, right?
Well, some would call me Jael Meyer on ordered on Wish.
Okay.
No, joking. So we founded the company together 5 years ago, or almost 5 years ago. That's true. She was then 19. I was, I think, 22, 23. And now obviously 4 years later. And so what did we see? So we both worked pretty young in interesting positions where we got asked a lot of the same questions. And it was, hey, what do you think can we do to target young clients, young readers, young everything? And we understood, okay, it seems to be a problem, like these young people, us. And at the same time, we also saw many campaigns, products being launched, targeting us and our age group. But yeah, I mean, like, just no, please don't. Horrible. And we were like, how is that possible? Like, how does this happen? And start to look into it and discovered that in most corporates, the target group 14 to 25 or even 28 like this is quite important. But there is no one on the team from that age group, from the audience, to bring in the view of the target group. And that's when we founded ZEAM consultancy to do exactly that. So to bring in the perspective of young people into campaigns, products, etc., targeting young people. And as you know, what happens when you do consulting work, it's like, okay, you should do this and that. And then they all look at you. So who's doing it now? So we also started the agency part of our business where we actually produce campaigns and build products and so on and so forth. And we work with pretty big clients, so corporates. That's our target. And we are about 25 to 30 people. I'm the oldest one. I'm 27. That's always quite funny. And that's it.
Okay, I totally love the approach, and I think of that myself sometimes. There's a cool anecdote that always comes to mind. Mark Thiemann, the CEO of Red Bull, told me that once. So he said basically, I was a big fan of Red Bull forever. As I was a student, they always had cool trucks with DJs and parties and this and that and that. And I was like wondering, like, basically students and people who are in college are most of the time broke. They don't have that much money. Why is Red Bull spending so much money on that? And he said, we want to create cool experiences and moments that you gain throughout studying, when you're working, when you're learning. And then a couple of years later, when you're a young professional, when you own your own company, when you are the head of a department or whatever, that you think back of the good memories you had with Red Bull and you purchase it in your daily habit, when you do your weekly errand run, when you get stuff for the office, that you have a cool, fancy Red Bull cooler in your office and all that. And yeah, for me, it worked out pretty good. So I was influenced back then, and now we have a cooler in each of our offices. So well done, Mark, chapeau. But here's the thing, it was so long term. I'm now 32, and when I got first in contact with the brand, it was probably maybe 22, 23, like getting in touch with it. And most of the companies don't look that long in the future. How do you tackle this? Because they have the problem now, and there's somebody in the board that says, yeah, we need to reach Gen Z or Gen Alpha or Beta or whatever, right? But we need to do it now. And how do you tackle that and challenge the expectations or manage the expectations that on the one side, you have to invest right now and build the brand recognition and create kind of like followers or fans of the brand that will be actually just purchasing, I don't know, car or whatever the product is, maybe just in 5 years or 7 years or so.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Gen Z has quite a lot of consumer power already. They're obviously not the main target group for most brands, but they do have a lot of consumer power, about 350 billions worldwide, or even 450, depends on what study you look at. So there is money. That's one reason why companies target young consumers. Another reason is actually illoyalty. And the thing is that when I asked my father, hey, do you want to try a new razor blade? It's cheaper than Gillette. They will send it to your home on a monthly basis, so you don't have to worry about, and you never have used razor blades. And they also plant a tree per package of razor blades, so it's more sustainable. I would ask him, do you want to try? And he would say, absolutely not. Because no, absolutely not. Because for the past 40 years, he trusted Gillette. And it will be very difficult, and in marketing language, that's very expensive, to make him try something else. Young people do not have this connection to brands yet. That's why they are illoyal. And often this is like used as something bad. Oh, these Gen Zs, like they never stay with anything. Blah, blah. But it's actually an opportunity, because if you win them today, and it's way more easier to win them today, that's why a lot of younger brands target younger audiences, because they're easier to win over. They do have the longest lifetime value, because if they build trust with your brand, they stay a long time with you. And I give you an example, which is even more crazy than Red Bull, because young people do drink Red Bull. But what they normally don't do is drive Porsche. And we have the opportunity to have worked with Porsche and other car brands. And there was quite a big article in Bloomberg about our work just recently, which also went viral. And we got a lot of questions like, hey, why is Porsche targeting young people? Like the young Gen Z cannot afford Porsche. And yeah, it's true. The average Porsche buyer is not 25, more like 55. Completely true. But first of all, as I said before, there are exceptions already that can drive a Porsche quite young. But the second thing, Robert Oder, which is the CMO of Porsche, told at a conference I've also attended, and it's that the dream to buy a Porsche, you buy a Porsche in your adult age, but you develop the dream way earlier. And if you don't dream about driving a Porsche one day, you won't buy it. And I also wrote my master thesis about that. So luxury strategy understands that quite well. So a lot of luxury brands target very young audiences to build that dream, and other brands basically have to do the same.
That's very, very smart. Can I read that master thesis somewhere? I'd love to read that.
Don't do it. No, I mean, I can of course share it with you.
That'd be cool.
I can also tell you way more about it. I mean, this was 5 years ago. For the past 5 years, I operationalized what I did there theoretically. So that's one reason that you look at that long term investment that you do into your target group. And then there is the other thing: what happens if you don't do it? Let's take Red Bull, your example. In Switzerland, there is a brand which is doing mate. I mean, a very big brand. Which is producing Swiss mate. And I heard that they have a higher yearly turnover than Red Bull now.
Wow.
Due to young consumers not drinking Red Bull anymore, but drinking mate. And the mate, I mean, if you go to a club, a few years ago, a lot of people would drink Red Bull vodka. You won't see it anymore. No one drinks Red Bull vodka anymore, but you will see mate vodka everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, also in Germany, Club Mate is probably one of the biggest. Yeah. What's the name of the Swiss brand? So
there is Puerto Mate is one, and the other one, but the biggest one, I lost the name. I will remember it again afterwards, and I will say it. But yeah, that's the Mate brand, and they are hugely successful with young consumers. And now for Red Bull, it gets really tricky because consumer behavior has shifted. So away from super sugary and all those kind of stuff, right, towards a bit different tastes. But also the user behavior online and for advertisements and all those kind of things. Youth culture developed, and you need to be on track of it. Otherwise, you lose the grip, you lose your current, but even more importantly, your future customer.
Would you say every generation has their brands? Or what can brands do to... would you say some brands will just die because they don't develop or invent?
I mean, if you don't rejuvenate your brand, yes, you'll die at some point. A good example, just 3 days ago, CNN put out a big article about Urban Outfitters. And Urban Outfitters is saying themselves, we don't reach Generation Z anymore, and we need to do a transformation. Otherwise, we'll just die. And this is where we come in with our company. For example, Zalando, very close to Urban Outfitters, right, has the same issue. So Zalando was founded quite a while back already, but it's still kind of like a new kid on the block, but you forget that it's already like 15 years or something. And they obviously, I mean, the people that buy on Zalando, they also grew older. It's always the same process. They also grew older. And now you need to make sure to bring in the young ones also, that they also use Zalando and not some other platform or other like Shein, for example, that they also buy on Zalando. And that's our work. So we rejuvenate companies from a customer point of view, but there is also the employee point of view. So a lot of companies struggle immensely with getting talents on board, and that's our other side that we work on a lot.
So the consulting part is one thing, and I get that, how you kind of do it. So basically, it's like, okay, let's do this and that to reach new or younger people. Let's go on TikTok. Let's do this. Let's do that. This is culture relevant to 14 to 20-year-olds, K-pop, whatever. I don't know. Like there's a lot of stuff, right? But when it actually comes to execution, I find that pretty challenging. Can you give us some insights on your success model?
Yeah. So, I mean, the consulting part is a bit more important than this and that. Not like just to that the audience understands how you should approach it if you do it yourself in your company. So, I think one of the biggest problems two of the biggest problems. One is, I think that we often see young people as we like them to see instead of how they actually are. Too emotional. We want our youth to be the way that we hope they are, in a way. So we don't look at exactly buying behavior, their user behavior. So what you need to do is to get data on it and not read one study. Oh, young people like sustainability, so I will just do a sustainable offer and it will sell itself, because it won't work. If you look at real data and trials and stuff, you will see that there are, for example, price is way more important for consideration than sustainability with most of young consumers. So that's one thing. The other thing is there is not that generation Z or that generation Alpha or whatever. It's always cohorts that you need to look into, and you need to identify, okay, what cohorts or what bubbles are interesting for my brand. For example, Red Bull went into the sports bubble, and into the party bubble, but now they lost the party bubble somehow, because there is so you need to look into it, how you don't get relevant the same way in the party bubble as you get relevant in the sports bubble of young people, obviously. So you need to also match your brand, your product with the right bubble within youth culture, and then enter those bubbles. So that's the strategy part, and that's very important to then really do it, because if you get that wrong, everything that you do won't work. And we see that actually a lot, like some campaigns or products that are just launched to target young people, but there is no kind of like no strategy behind it. It's just being done but out in the air, and then often at some point those kind of projects get killed because the C-level says, and they're right about it, we're investing money here, what does it bring us? And if you cannot back it up with something, it's just not, it has no value. And how we, sorry, you wanted to ask something.
Yes, so I would love to talk a little bit more about cohorts, and it feels like everything gets more granular and granular. The more generations there are, would you say this is just because we also have better understanding of data nowadays, and it's all pretty much visible, all these subcultures, or have these subcultures been around forever? Let's say like even the baby boomers generation and all that, and we just didn't know that much about it, and we weren't able to attract them that easily or identify them.
I mean, I cannot talk that well about the past since I did not live it. But I can say how it is today, or for people my age. And the thing is, when you grow up in our generation, or when you grow up, it's not the neighbors or the people at school or just your friends that you are in touch with. It's the whole world. And one of the best things social media brought to us is that you can connect like-minded people across the globe. I think one of the worst things is that it drove people kind of like home in their beds, being connected with people with the same interests. I think now we see a lot of these social clubs, so connecting over social, but then getting together in real life. I think that's a very good development of social media era. But anyways, regarding the bubbles, I think because you were able to find people with the same interests anywhere, you find people for any interest, because there is always someone also interested in the same thing as you are. And before, maybe in your village there was not another people loving manga, but now, like, on the world there are like a billion people loving manga, and you can connect in many different ways. So that's one thing. So bubbles are better in connecting themselves within a bubble, so more bubbles can exist. And then there is the other thing, how you can enter way more bubbles, because there are different ways of entering a bubble. So when you would do marketing like a few decades back, you would just do a TV ad and target all the people, or you would just do some out-of-home campaign, you would target all the people. But you can not do a campaign on one channel and target all the people anymore. It's simply not possible, because there is not one medium that everyone is consuming. It's way more fragmented. But that way you can target very strategically different bubbles. And I think that's the other reason why bubbles are way more important, or cohorts are way more important to understand today than it was before.
You also talked about the measurement and KPIs and stuff. return of investment when attracting Gen Z also is not necessarily always the driving factor, as you need to save some money to buy that Porsche at some point, or buying your Birkin bag or whatever you want to sell. But what would be good KPIs for measuring success of campaigns if the big brand, if the corporate gets actually closer to the Gen Z?
So, for example, one company, one case study that is interesting, I guess, for the audience, and we work with Dosenbach, which is Deichmann. In Switzerland. It just is named Dosenbach, and
so it's a big retail shoe manufacturer or shoe company, right? Yeah.
I think Deichmann is the biggest in the world, actually.
Yep.
So they're really, really big. Also, they own also Snipes. And yeah, they're just really big. And also in Switzerland, Dosenbach is the biggest shoe retailer in Switzerland. And we worked together for 3 years. So 3 years ago we started, and it was okay. It's also a good value, low price, same positioning as Deichmann. And how can you build relevance in youth culture? And for example, there, to start with, like, we also defined the right cohorts, we defined the right channels, the right messaging, all this kind of stuff. And now today we have the most successful, like in looking at reach, TikTok channel, organic TikTok channel in Switzerland. So without ad spend, we reach 77,000 impressions per post on average, for example. And for example, this year we also had the most successful influencer collaboration of Switzerland, so with the highest reach of an organic influencer collaboration, so not pushed by ads, and a lot of those like successes, which is possible because we work together very well and they are very open to do cool stuff. But then on the measurement side, so that, for example, the TikTok channel that is so strong is one way of measuring it, but just an instrument for what you want to achieve. And we do, for example, I think all 6 months, a Kantar study where you see how the brand wins traction with young consumers. So it has higher recognition, higher consideration. So you do that kind of studies all the time. So we work with corporates, as I said. Almost every corporate tracks those kind of data anyway. So we always see the impact of our work quite directly, also driven by what channels. For example, in that case, TikTok has quite a high relevance. But then you also do, like, you build campaigns on top, which are performance driven. We, for example, launched a Dosiletten. For all the Germans, you probably know what that means.
Adiletten? Like the flip-flops? Yeah.
Exactly, but for Dosenbach, Dosiletten. And you could not buy them, you could just win them. And we did a very cool campaign, had thousands and thousands of leads where people not only put their name and email address, but also their shoe size, which is super cool. And we paid almost no money because people wanted to look at our ads. They wanted to win those Dosiletten, which, I mean, if you look at them, it's crazy. It's like Dosenbach Adiletten, like who wears that, right? If you would ask my parents, like, who would wear Dosenbach Adiletten, like, why would you do that? But they have cultural relevance within youth in Switzerland, which we built over the last year, or helped to build over the last year. And there are many different other KPIs that you can look at, like how, for example, in retail, you can track what is the age of the customers that come in, or for example, when you do many more KPIs that you can look at. And overall, you can just see not a trend, but like a transformation within companies when you look at their customers. So do you actually become younger, or do you grow older? So that's the main question.
Okay, that's It's so interesting. I think that podcast will be a little bit longer. I love every point of that. And also to you guys, if you're listening right now, if you like the episode or if you have any questions, please write us an email. You can just text to podcast@bdxmedia.de. You can send me a DM on Instagram. And also if you have further questions, you can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn or maybe to Jo as well. He will get a lot of messages, so just be prepared. So if you're listening when you're in the car or just scrolling next to it, just write us a message. We are always happy to get your feedback. I have another question, and it comes also to trust. So you guys are very young, and I have this in my company sometimes. Our average age is now 25, I'd say. But a couple of years ago, we were also at 22, 21. And myself, I'm pretty self-confident. I'm the founder, the CEO, blah, 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 all the fancy titles and shit. So people listened to me and trusted me. But some of my employees, they always had to deal with like prejudices and people think like, okay, here's a 22-year-old. What does he or she know from the world? How do you gain that trust?
Yeah, I mean, there is something that McKinsey is doing quite well. So if you look at McKinsey, I come from a business school. I have quite a classic business education.
You've been at London Business School, right?
No, I did the ZEAMs at Nova in Lisbon and LSE, so London School of Economics. And what McKinsey is doing, like they hired a lot. Most of my friends at university, they went to McKinsey, BCG, Bain. And if you look at those companies, I mean, they have super young people doing a lot of the work, and they work with clients. I mean, the CEOs of the biggest companies, like giving recommendations that actually are quite important as a decision basis for a lot of money and so on. So, and what do they do so that is possible? The young people, they come in with a lot of they build a lot of knowledge and trust and stuff with putting out data, putting out case studies and all these kind of things that show that you have competence. And I think nothing creates more trust in professional relationships when you are young than competence. And competence is not shown by talking about things, but showing things that you understand or that you already did and those kind of stuff. So today, 5 years later, I think for us it's quite easy because we did a lot of very good projects.
And you have the whole track record, right?
Yeah, very solid work and also a name and very good clients and all these kind of things. But a few years ago, that was not as easy. 400%, especially to win or get bigger projects, because they would give it to us in a way of like, okay, I think they can add value with their specific knowledge about young people, but they would not trust us from a project management point of view. So I think there it's very important to, I think a lot of agencies are more into, we're super creative and that's why clients will work with us. And yeah, I also agree, creativity is super important. It's key. But actually, I think the outcome of a project is just 50% of it. The other 50% is how you got to that output, the whole process of it. And I think that's the part where you need to gain the trust of clients. And I think we learned to show not only how creative we are and output driven, but also how process focused we are in getting to that output, because that's what especially bigger clients want to see and trust in.
Totally. I 100% agree on this. And this is the thing we learned over the past 5 years. And probably I would say like for 2 years, we mastered that now. As it's most of the time, how does a client feel throughout the process? we really believe in proactive communication and timelines. So every presentation, every project we have, there's a timeline attached. We always think one step ahead. Or even, let's say there's a meeting, the meeting won't be finished until unless there's clear what happens next, who is in charge. Next follow-up meeting is scheduled, and I always say to my team, the client has a shitload of work. Their desk is full and they don't need another problem in their life, in their job. So when they hire us, they actually want to get rid of some problems. So that's why we are there. We are the solutions. And if there are any challenges, we have to come up with the answers right away, or like at least with some options how to proceed.
I mean, that as a consultancy or as an agency, I think you also need to be realistic about the work that you're doing. Because often it's like, oh, we are saving the world. But no, we don't. We are not saving the world. What we are doing, or why clients are hiring us, is either because we have more competence in something they don't have, or they think, they need more competence in something, or they have not the capacity to do it. So that's the two reasons, right? Is there any other reason why you would work with an agency or a consultancy?
That's
right.
There's other reason, right? It's like just to get things done, huh?
Yeah, it's those two things. You lack capacity, or you lack a specific knowledge or competence that you then hire through an agency or through a consultancy. And if you create more work for the client than you solve, for example, you have quite a problem if they buy you or book you because because they have not the time to do it themselves, because then it's if so that I think it's clear what we mean.
Yeah. Jo, I have one more topic I wanted to talk to you about, and this was also part of our late night conversation at that bar, and it was about the similarities of newspaper headlines to creating organic content. As you guys, Yael, your wife, and you are very successful on LinkedIn. So guys, in case you haven't heard of them, please check them out. It's Jo Dietrich and Yael Meyer on LinkedIn. Always very inspiring posts, but also sometimes a little bit controversial. And please talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a background in journalism. That's right. And also a lot of people in our team have a background in journalism, and more specifically in boulevard journalism, because in the social media age, so one thing that really turned upside down in advertisements, the plot should be at the beginning and not at the end of the ad, right? In most cases. And it's not only organic content, it's actually also for paid content, or for paid content, performance content. And we figured that working in Boulevard helped us immensely to bring that knowledge into social media, because it really follows the same rules. You need people to immediately understand the meaning of your post, or of whatever you want to say. You need to trigger emotions, you need to catch, you need to engage, like all those kind of things. And this, I mean, it's way harder. If you look at the Bild Zeitung, I mean, this is the hardest kind of journalism.
Biggest newspaper outlet in Germany, right? Yeah.
Biggest, and also most controversial, most likely, or one of the most controversial. But I mean, this comes from, but why is it the biggest? Because most people understand it and are interested when they see it. And social is the same. You need to get people interested by just seeing it, and then they need to read it, they need to understand it, and they need to engage with it. And that's what I think, that's where we are coming from. And I think that's why this works so well, and also across platforms. So this is successful when we do TikTok. This is successful on LinkedIn. This is successful on Instagram. This is anywhere, like on any social platform. I think that works.
Would you say people misunderstand one thing. So usually, or let's frame it this way. I believe a lot of people think if you write in a boulevard style or with hooks and catchy stuff, the quality is necessarily lower of the whole journalism piece or of the whole content.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I mean, no, I don't think so. I mean, it depends how you would define quality. Obviously, like a very well researched background article about something can be beautifully to read because you just see, I mean, that is quality journalism. But also a headline that half the country is talking about, for me, that's also quality journalism because you hit the nerve.
You hit a nerve and you attach people to it, especially if people don't care that much. A lot of people have, if it comes to like deeper topics, not that many people have an opinion or want to get into that, right? But if you frame it the right way and you can spin it, then it's like, oh wow, that's like top of the news today.
Cook it down to the essence of it, and I think for me, I just love to do that, but not only in language, also in the things that we do. And yeah, I think simplicity is something beautiful in that way. And it's something very challenging. Like it's also, by the way, it's what Steve Jobs did with Apple. It's like really bring it down to the, or also Porsche. If you look at the design of Porsche, they say it themselves, like it's driven by functionality. There is nothing on a Porsche without a function. And in the end, it looks, for me, 911 most beautiful car, even though I'm not a car guy, but it's just, you cannot look at it and say,
you got yours yet?
No. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And it's driven by functionality. And I think also language or if it's driven by functionality, is beautiful. And for example, I think working in journalism helped us a lot in achieving that and having the successes that we have today on social media platforms, but also reading, I think, helps us a lot, or keeping us up to it. So there are some authors which write in German language. I mean, that is just on point. And
can you just name a couple of names if we want to check it out?
So I think one of my favorite wrote Strafe. You know the book?
No, Strafe?
Yeah, it's from von Schirach is his name.
Yeah. Ferdinand von Schirach. Yep.
Yes.
Great writer.
We read all the books he wrote, and for this funny, like the stories, I don't love the stories, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are rather dry in a way. Like for me, I don't read true crime or listen to true crime as well. But yeah, I don't read it for this. I just simply read it for the language, because the language is so perfect. It's so on. For example, yeah, it's perfect. His language is perfect. And after I read in one of his books, I think I am a better writer. It's true. It's really.
I mean, it comes from practice. I remember back then when I was in. I mean, it's a long time ago. when I was in 5th grade, we had to write our own tales and stuff in the school, and I was listening back then to audiobooks and reading the Harry Potter books, and there was also like a very vibrant language, very picturesque. And I just stole a couple of the lines and put it in my my stories back then, and that was like so much fun. And this is a thing. If you guys take one thing away from this podcast, if you're reading stuff, even if it's boulevard or if it's controversial or if it's newsletter or whatever, try to read it active and think about. What was the actual mechanism behind it? Why was it so interesting? And if you find out that and implement this in your own texts or your own emails or your own LinkedIn posts, then you will definitely become a better writer. And I found out for myself.
You think you can crack that, like language systems?
I don't think necessarily crack them all, but. I read something and then I think like, okay, why was it interesting to me? for example, I love to read biographies. Like I read or listen, like the good ones I read, and the average ones I just listen to or listen to a summary, an audiobook or whatever. And I thought for a long time about like, why am I so interested in that? And it's emotions. It's very emotional, and I learn a lot through stories. It's the same like when we sit down together in a bar. I want to hear stories, right? Like of how did you do that deal with Telekom or with Dosenbach or whoever, right? Like, and the story is that sticks to people's mind. And that was around there for 40,000 years. The cave people did the same thing. Emotions, storytelling. And of course, I want to be like one of the big founders at some point, and I see myself in them, and I can relate to that. So, and that's basically what I found out about myself from that.
You know what is something interesting I heard about biography a few years ago? So there is one of the brightest young people I got to know is Wonder Child in Switzerland, an investor. I think back then he was 14. And already managed quite a big portfolio. And he said he only reads biographies. And I was like, why? Why would you do that?
What's his name?
Richard. And he said, that stick to me. He said, as a young person, if I read theory, it really doesn't help me because I lack context. But if I read biographies of the most successful people out there, and when I find myself in a situation familiar to one of the situations I read and saw how they use their experience to cope with it, I can build on it, do it the same way, and you won't end up that bad if you follow the experience of the most successful people of our time. And I was like, okay, that's a pretty good argument for biographies. I haven't heard before. And so young people should read biographies, I guess.
I want to point out one recommendation here. And I know it's a lot of time. It's usually a lot of time invest and a lot of commitment if you read an actual biography. It's like maybe 12 hours, 14 hours or whatever. And that's way more than like just 15 seconds for watching a reel. But there's a great podcast by David Senra. It's called Founders Podcast. And this guy is reading all the books, all the biographies about founders. And then he summarizes it and reads a little bit from the book. So it's like 1 hour podcast, but about like so many different people, like from Steve Jobs to Vanderbilt, who built the railroads in the US, and Mark Twain and this and that. And this is basically my first touch point. I listen to the podcast. If I like the podcast, I actually get the biography and get the whole one. But if the podcast is average, it's like, okay, I kind of learned something and I go on with the next one. So you guys should definitely check out this.
I'll also put out a recommendation regarding biographies, and it's Let My People Go Surfing.
Oh, it's a Patagonia guy, right?
It's the Patagonia guy. And I swear to God, like if you found a company that is transformational in how you think about it. And I did the whole business education. I wish really that this book was part of it. I'm so happy that I'm glad that I found it for myself and added to it. But it gives you a different perspective than what you were taught, but no way a lesser effective one. I think it's a very, very, very good book for founders.
Yeah, check it. Let My People Go Surfing, and the founders Yvonne Chouinard. I can't pronounce the name. Sorry for that. You guys, you find it. It's the founder of Patagonia. Yeah, amazing. There was a super insightful discussion, and I would love to continue that at some point. We haven't touched all the topics I wanted to talk about. There's so much more. I want to learn about more about LinkedIn. I want to learn more about your acquisition of clients, and also how to rejuvenate teams at some point. And I want to put this out maybe as a cliffhanger for a possible second episode. I want to learn how will ZEAM look like in 5 years. As you guys grow older, you guys also have to rejuvenate. And as you're a very, very smart person, you probably already have some ideas on how to do that. So thank you very much for taking your time today. You brought a lot of input and a lot of value to our community, to New Trend Society. So thank you for that. And guys, please check out Jo Dietrich on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on all the common platforms. He has a lot to say and a lot of interesting stuff. So thank you very much for being part of the podcast today.
Thanks for the invitation and again, the very nice conversation.